Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. As reported by Inner City Press, the atmosphere in the federal courtroom during Sean Diddy Combs' trial was electric with anticipation. All eyes were on the next witness when the rear doors swung open and Will Smith walked in. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Even the judge seemed momentarily stunned. No prior announcement, no prepared statement, just Will striding forward with purpose. Until that moment, he had remained silent as his name surfaced in headlines, courtroom leaks, and whispers of audio recordings too shocking to be made public. Something had shifted. Perhaps it was the relentless rumors, the sting of betrayal from once trusted allies, or the impact of hearing that tape played in a closed session. Whatever it was, Will Smith was done staying quiet. He didn't take the stand as a celebrity, but as a man who had seen too much and said too little. When he began to speak, the courtroom was unprepared for the revelations about Diddy, the parties, the manipulation, and the fear. Revelations that weren't just bombshells, but a stark warning. The day had started like any other in the Diddy trial. The room hummed with hushed conversations, reporters scribbled in their assigned rows, and attorneys exchanged quiet strategies. Everything seemed routine until the side doors opened and Will Smith entered alone. No entourage, no legal team, no warning. The room fell silent. Some thought it was a mistake. Others suspected a publicity stunt. But the way Will moved, deliberate, focused, with the familiar Fresh Prince charm replaced by something raw and unfiltered, signaled this was no act. The judge raised an eyebrow. Diddy, who had been lounging confidently at the defense table, suddenly stiffened. Will walked straight to the witness stand, avoiding eye contact with anyone, including Diddy. "I wasn't summoned here today," he began. "I requested to speak." The judge granted permission, and from that moment, the trial's trajectory changed. What Will was about to reveal wasn't fueled by media speculation or social media leaks. It was a truth that had weighed on him for years, rooted in a party no one was supposed to discuss. "I've held a lot back for a long time," he said. "I've smiled on red carpets, collected awards, made films about courage and integrity. But none of that erases what I witnessed, what I went through, and who was behind it." He paused, glancing briefly at Diddy. "That was you." Will recounted how it all began with an invitation like so many in Hollywood. It came through a mutual contact, someone he'd collaborated with before. They pitched it as a celebration. Diddy's birthday, a laid-back event with music and networking, a place for stars to unwind. Will had attended similar gatherings, so he didn't think twice. But the moment he stepped into that sprawling mansion in the hills, he sensed something was wrong. The vibe was off, and what unfolded there changed everything. Will Smith's testimony, as reported by Inner City Press, continued to grip the federal courtroom during Sean Diddy Combs' trial. He described arriving at the event where black SUVs lined the entrance and security personnel swarmed the premises. "The moment I walked in, they took my phone," Will said. "They called it a privacy measure to protect the guests. But it felt wrong, like they were making sure nothing could be recorded." That, he noted, should have been his first warning. Ushered inside, Will found the atmosphere unsettling. Dim lights, a low, almost trance-like rhythm pulsing through the air, and mirrors covering the walls. There were no visible cameras, he said, but it felt like eyes were everywhere. After some drinks and small talk, Diddy approached him directly. He said something like, "You're one of us now," Will recalled. His smile wasn't welcoming. It was possessive. Will followed Diddy to a private room expecting a business discussion. Instead, what he saw rattled him deeply. There were people, men, women, some familiar faces from movies and music, others who looked far too young, he testified. Some were performing, others just watching, like it was a show. And Diddy? He was laughing, acting like it was perfectly normal. Will paused, his voice heavy. "I didn't know how to get out. That was the point. You were in, whether you wanted to be or not." Days later, Will received a call from a blocked number. A voice said, "Hope you enjoyed yourself, Fresh Prince," before hanging up. He brushed it off as a prank until an unmarked envelope arrived at his office. Inside was a flash drive. I hesitated, but I looked, Will said. The footage showed him on a couch, disoriented, laughing at something he couldn't recall. I don't remember being that out of it, he admitted. Behind the camera, a voice, Diddy's, said, "That's how we keep him close." Will described the fear that hit him as unlike anything he'd ever felt. "I wasn't just invited to that party," he said. "I was pulled in." The manipulation didn't stop there. Will received more invitations to similar events, which he declined. Soon after, film roles he'd been negotiating vanished. Longtime colleagues stopped returning his calls. Online rumors began swirling, accusations about his personal life, his stability, his relationships. "I knew what it was," Will said. "It was pressure. Diddy never had to spell it out. He made it clear, stay silent or pay the price." For years, Will kept quiet, smiling through interviews, dodging gossip, and focusing on his career. But seeing others like Cassie, Don Richard, and even Meek Mill speak out changed something in him. "If they're talking, why am I still hiding?" he asked the courtroom. Diddy didn't just derail careers, he made people afraid to tell the truth. That fear, Will explained, was what finally brought him to testify. He paused, looking at the jury, his voice steady but resolute. "That video wasn't just evidence, it was a chain," he said. "From that moment, everything I did felt controlled." Invitations kept coming through his agent. Events, meetings, projects, all laced with an unspoken expectation. "It was never just a party," Will said, "it was a system." Will Smith's testimony, as reported by Inner City Press, painted a chilling picture of the subtle but relentless control exerted by Sean "Diddy" Combs. "Every time I declined one of Diddy's invitations, things would shift," Will told the courtroom. "I'd say no to an event, and within days, a project that was ready to go would suddenly stall or vanish." He emphasized that this wasn't a one-off occurrence. It was a deliberate pattern. Diddy didn't need to make threats himself, Will explained. He had a network, PR teams, bloggers, producers who could create problems out of nowhere or make opportunities disappear just as fast. Will recounted a specific incident from 2013 when he was on the verge of signing a major deal with a luxury brand for an international campaign. "We were in the final stages. I'd even shot the initial lookbook," he said. "Then, out of the blue, they dropped me. No explanation. 2 weeks later, another invite to a Diddy event landed in my inbox. When he declined again, the harassment began. Phone calls from unknown numbers, gossip blogs posting oddly detailed stories about his personal life. It was the kind of stuff only someone with inside access could have known," Will said. "It felt like psychological warfare. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you're paranoid, but then you see the patterns, the punishments. You realize you're being cornered." Will told the court he wasn't alone. "I know others in the industry dealing with the same thing," he said. "Some are still silent, tied up by contracts or too scared they'll be exposed the same way I was." He turned to face Diddy directly, his voice calm but piercing. "You didn't just collect people, you controlled them." The courtroom felt the weight of his words. Will went further, describing how Diddy's influence extended beyond individual artists to the very core of Hollywood. "You couldn't step onto a major stage without crossing paths with someone he'd elevated," he said. He recalled a 2016 charity gala where high-profile figures from music, film, politics, and tech were openly deferring to Diddy. "I saw an executive from a streaming platform hand him a USB drive and whisper, 'You get the final say.' I didn't know what was on it, but it confirmed what I'd suspected. Diddy wasn't just networking, he was pulling the strings." Will described witnessing actors, rappers, and other public figures act unnaturally submissive around Diddy, laughing too loudly, agreeing too quickly, as if desperate to stay in his favor. "They weren't his friends," Will said. "They were his survivors." He admitted he stayed silent for years, fearing that speaking out would end his career for good. "But then I realized I was already being sidelined," he said. "No official blacklist, just whispers, doubts, and closed doors. The only reason I didn't fade away was because my audience, the public, kept me relevant. That's the one thing Diddy couldn't control." Over time, Will began to piece things together. He revisited old photos, event footage, after-party clips, and press junkets, noticing Diddy's presence, or his influence, lurking in the background. He was always there, if not in person, then in power, Will said. The realization built slowly, but it led to a moment that changed everything. Will Smith turned to the jury, his voice steady but weighted with conviction. If you want to understand Diddy's power, ask yourself how someone like me could stay silent for 2 decades without even realizing I was silenced, he said, as reported by Inner City Press. By the time his testimony reached the public, Hollywood's attempts at damage control were futile. Courtroom clips spread like wildfire online, hashtags like #WillSpeaks, #FreakOffTape, and #DiddyFile trending within hours. For the first time, the world saw Will not as the polished superstar, but as a survivor reclaiming his story. I knew speaking out would bring consequences, Will said, but I didn't expect them to hit so fast. Within a day of his testimony, 2 major brand endorsements fell through, and a studio paused promotion for a film he'd already completed. But that didn't matter, he told the court. I lost something far more precious years ago, my voice. His phone buzzed with messages, some from actors, producers, and directors offering quiet support, others issuing warnings. One text read, "You have no idea who you're taking on." Another warned, "You've made yourself untouchable. And not in a good way." Will referenced a few industry figures, Kevin Hart, Meek Mill, Lucian Grange, without diving into specifics, citing legal constraints, but nodded when the prosecution asked if they were connected to Diddy's influence. This isn't just about Diddy, he said. It's about an industry that thrives on silence, where everyone's complicit in that trade. He admitted he feared more damaging material might surface. I know there could be other recordings out there, he said. They'll try to paint me as unhinged or broken. Let them. I'm not here to save my image. I'm here to stand for the truth. Will anticipated the backlash, the denials, and Diddy's legal team dismissing his claims as fabrication. They'll say I'm bitter that I'm hiding something, he told the jury. But if I were lying, why wait until now? Why speak when I have more to lose than ever? He paused, letting the question hang, then delivered a line that stilled the room. The truth may arrive late, but it lands like a storm. For his final statement, the judge permitted Will to address Diddy directly. He stepped down from the witness stand, moved closer, and locked eyes with him. You built an empire on control, Will said. You called it success, culture, even love. But it was fear, nothing more. Diddy sat motionless, his attorney murmuring in his ear, but Will held his gaze. I saw what you did to those women. I saw what you did to me. I heard the things you said when you thought I wasn't listening. You broke people for fun. Then Will reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph. This is me in 2004, before that first party, he said, holding it up for the court. That's the man I was. His voice softened. I haven't seen him in years. He turned to the jury, the photo still in hand, his expression resolute. Will Smith faced the jury, his voice resolute. If you think this is just about Cassie or me or one night in some mansion, you're missing the bigger picture, he said, as reported by Inner City Press. This is about a web of power built to bury the truth. If we don't dismantle it, it'll keep going. He turned to Diddy one final time, his words cutting through the silence. You once bragged that nobody parties like Diddy. Well, nobody deceives like you either. With that, Will gathered his belongings and left the witness stand, exiting the courtroom without a backward glance. Diddy sat frozen, pale, his hands trembling. For the first time in years, he wasn't the one steering the narrative. When Will stepped down, he didn't look triumphant. He looked like a man who had finally stopped running from a 20-year burden. The courtroom remained heavy, almost hesitant to move forward. The judge appeared visibly shaken, some jurors wiped away tears, and Diddy, for once, seemed at a loss for words. Outside, Will avoided the press, offering no waves or poses. He walked out of the courthouse head high but shoulders heavy with the weight of decades of trauma. When reporters later asked if he felt relieved, he reportedly said, "Relief isn't the word. It's just done." But the world outside was just starting to grapple with his words. Hollywood went into damage control overdrive. Executives canceled meetings, agencies stalled deals, and directors and producers who once called Will family now faced relentless questions. Publicists issued vague statements expressing deep concern and a commitment to truth. Behind closed doors, crisis teams scrambled and PR firms circulated memos urging clients to publicly distance themselves from any ties to Diddy. While many feigned shock, the internet was already unearthing evidence. Old clips of Diddy mingling with A-listers, footage from parties where attendees looked uneasy, interviews where guests sidestepped pointed questions. Most striking were resurfaced videos of Will from years past, visibly tensing when Diddy's name was mentioned, and clips from his Fresh Prince days where fans now saw a young man smiling through something unspoken. The public's reaction was visceral. Not just shock, but anger. Anger that someone like Will had carried this alone, that whispers had been dismissed as conspiracies, that an entire industry had enabled silence for so long. Will didn't retreat, though. The day after his testimony, he shared a single post online, a black and white photo of himself as a young actor in 1993, standing on a film set, smiling into the sunlight. The caption read, "He didn't know what was coming, but he survived." I'm proud of him. No hashtags, no names, just those words. The response was immediate. Millions of shares, countless comments, a tidal wave of support. The online response to Will Smith's testimony was overwhelming. Celebrities, activists, and everyday people flooded his post with gratitude for his bravery. Survivors of abuse, particularly men, poured out their own stories in the comments. "You gave us a voice," one wrote. "If Will can stand up, so can we." Meanwhile, inside the federal courtroom, as reported by Inner City Press, Diddy's legal team was in disarray. Rumors spread that new subpoenas were being issued, not just to musicians or assistants, but to high-ranking executives at record labels, distribution firms, and even media giants. Will's testimony hadn't just been personal, it had fractured a long-standing barrier, and now a wave of revelations loomed. Whispers circulated about the existence of more recordings, not just audio, but video footage, some allegedly involving other prominent figures. The court had sealed these materials for now, but sources hinted that if any leaked, the entertainment industry would be turned upside down. Will, however, stepped back from the spotlight. He declined interviews and canceled public appearances, not out of retreat, but to focus on what mattered most. He's spending time with his kids, rebuilding himself, a close friend told Variety anonymously. For the first time in years, he's not putting on a front. He's healing. As the court session drew to a close that day, the judge issued a rare statement that stunned even the press. What we heard today wasn't just testimony, it was a turning point. This court recognizes the courage it took to share it. The day's final image wasn't of Diddy or even Will, it was of the jury, sitting in stunned silence, grappling with the weight of what they'd heard. In that quiet, one truth rang clear. The age of silence was over.